you give a man a fish, you feed him for a day, you teach him how to fish, and you feed him for a lifetime. And this is about learning to be a fisher of men, because that's the hard ones to find, the fishers of men, because they're too busy gossiping about them or blaming them or judging them or something. And those are the blocks that we put in our own life. That this is all God's creation. So it's all the one. There's only God. And he's allowing us to choose this day. And you are doing so, whether you're aware you're doing so or not. Better you know what you're choosing than being chosen for, though. So it's a simple idea that you must contemplate and meditate upon, that you do have a valid say. You're saying your valid say at every moment of time, but about what? Because it isn't falling into the past. It's being projected into our future. It's looking for a like vibration. And when it finds it, you experience it. Do you think really that's simple enough?
I think it's very simple, and I want to challenge as we talk about choosing this day. Anytime you're going through something, ask yourself, what am I thinking at this moment? What am I thinking at this moment? The reason why I'm asking myself that, because I want to become aware. Attitude awareness and imaginational control. What am I thinking at this moment? Because, see, if you can tune in to what it is that you're thinking about, then you can begin to be self-directed. And if you can direct your thoughts purposefully, you can change your world. This is what Lindell was saying. Change your mind, change your world. But see, if you're not mindful, if you're just sporadically, uncontrollably just thinking, and you think that that's beneficial.
You think that's thinking.
And that's initially what I was going to say, but I backed away and used beneficial. If you think that that's thinking, what you're going to do is get the results of that, and you're going to say, why is my world so chaotic? And it's chaotic because your thinking is chaotic. DeCarlo's world is chaotic when his thinking is chaotic. And it's when DeCarlo gets centered, no matter what's going on in the world around him, but when DeCarlo gets centered and becomes mindful of his thoughts, then he can become a purposeful creator, but not until then. Would you agree?
He has to have an idea to move on. And you can only think one thought at a time. So if you're choosing that thought, you know where you're going, what you're doing, and why you're doing it. But if you don't choose it, then that gives a signal to the world around you. He's not paying attention. We'll give him something to think about.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And in that, get in mind, you have to begin deciding who you want to be. Even as Lindell asked me the question the other day, now I begin seeing myself from who it is that I am in my future. I begin living in that. I study in that. I write my books in that. I coach in that. Everything that I'm doing is from who I see myself being, not who I've been. Because if it's true that our world is being advanced from this moment of our thoughts, then I want to advance the more powerful, the more successful, the life changer DeCarlo, and not the DeCarlo that I've been in the past. And likewise with you creators, you have to get a vision of who it is that you desire to be and begin thinking from that person, not the person you have been, but the person that you desire to be.
That's it. And you can do it even though you still have to play the part that you're playing right now. You can do both because you're allowed to have 51% thinking about one thing and 49% thinking about the other side of your life, you can do this. I mean, it is doable. It's confusing at first. I'm sure you understand that. It is confusing at first, but after a while, you can actually clearly see the separation between not thinking thinkingly and thinking approvingly, and that's the difference that makes the difference, because you're always thinking about something. So are you approving of what you're thinking, or are you just denying yourself? It's very simple to figure it out once you will start watching your own conversation, because, man, I was in a terrible state. But you can change your mind. You can change your world. The first one does the second one. You see, you don't have to do the work. You only have to do the deciding what you want the work to accomplish. Got it?
When you said that, it took me all the way back to Genesis, and then I fast-forwarded up to Revelation, and I think about all the people, the personas, the states, all started with an ideal. Abraham started with an ideal. Moses started with an ideal. David, Daniel, and the list goes on, up to Jesus, Peter, Paul. Everybody started with a thought. Jesus understood that he was the Son of God, but he didn't understand he was the Son of God until he began to acknowledge that he was the Son of God. When we begin to acknowledge our sonship, our daughtership, as children of God, and we begin walking in that. See, Lindell said something that was paramount. At first, you're not going to feel like you are the person that you desire to be, but nobody is. When you're looking at a Warren Buffett or Bill Gates, or let's say somebody who is living the life that they desire to live, when they begun that journey, they didn't feel like they were the person that they desired to be, but they kept on walking in it until it became their reality. And Neville said at one time, he said, if you've imagined yourself to be something and you're not that person, what are you doing not still imagining it? You do it until it becomes the fulfillment or the realization of who you are.
That's it. Yeah. You stand and see the victory. If you sit down, it's over.
Then you got to start from scratch. But see, we got a name for that. We call that double-mindedness.
That's right.
And universe can't. Whatever you call source can't work with a dual mind. You have to have a single focus. And that focus has to be on the thing that you desire, not what you don't desire, because the only thing you're going to get by focusing on what you don't desire is more of what you don't desire. And Lindell said something earlier about worry, and he says that worry is only manifesting more of the thing that you're worrying about. I like to say that when you're worrying about something, you're praying about the thing that you don't want to manifest in your life. It's a negative prayer.
You have to keep it in mind. Every word is acted upon, you see, to make up your world of experience. Every word. You have to watch what you're saying. You have to know what you're saying. You have to feel what you're saying before you let it go. Because if you don't, you're creating, but you don't know what you're creating. And it's always a surprise. Whereas if you know what you're thinking and feeling, then you know where you're going and what you're doing. And very little is a surprise because you get what you expect, not necessarily what you want, unless it happens to be the same thing.
Absolutely. I want to share a brief story. Before I moved out to Georgia, I actually resided in California, and I kept hearing about, now, at this time, I really didn't fully understand, probably little understanding of how this manifestation stuff worked. But I kept hearing about the opportunities in Georgia, in Atlanta in particular. And I was working a job in California. I was working for what they call a roll forming company, and they basically made mini blinds, towel bars, those metal things that you have in your house that you use on a daily basis that we take for granted somebody created. But the point being, I decided in my mind's eye that I was going to move out to Atlanta. Now, I was only making $9 an hour. I had no idea how I was going to get to Atlanta. But once I set that thought in motion and I began picturing myself in Atlanta, within a matter of about 6 months, things had orchestrated themselves. Not going to go into detail of how it manifested, but I found myself residing in Georgia within a 6-month time period. Most of us do this all the time. We think about a grocery list. We think about things that we need. You guys are creating successfully every day.
That's right. That's right. Right.
We're asking you to choose.
No, you're right. Absolutely.
So we're asking you to choose purposefully the life that you desire. Begin setting your attention, your mind. Nobody can stop you in this entire world from creating the life that you desire, the life that you imagine for yourself, except you.
When you let go and let God, you're putting it in His hands. None can deliver out of His hands. You're answered already. He's already said yes. When He gave you choose this day, He said yes to whatever you choose. Don't be careful what you choose.
Whatever you choose.
That's right.
It's powerful. So take a hold of that. And we're all about choosing.
That's right.
Whether we're choosing in a global mind consciousness or whether we're choosing individually. We're all about choosing.
That's right. And they tell you, news you need to know. You really need to know this.
Yeah.
I'll give you something to worry about. News you need to know.
It's unfortunate, speaking about news, most of the things that sell on the news, and I'm not even going to give names to whatever the news that they're selling today, but most of it's bad news. And most of us take that bad news, we merge it into, we infuse it into our days, and we say, well, the newscaster said this, so it must be true. Don't let the mass media choose for you this day.
Don't let anybody choose for you this day.
Absolutely.
Because if you can't choose for yourself, then you ain't a self. You're making God wonder what you're doing. You know, because He's creating whatever you're doing in mind. So be sure it's something you want, because you're going to get it. I mean, that's the whole thing. Be wise in your thinking. You know, like I said, you can only think one thought at a time. And as long as you're choosing it, well, you're free. But the minute you start letting something else choose it for you, well, then you're not free anymore. It's very fragile difference, but it is a difference. And you are in charge of making the difference. So if you don't make the charge, then you just suffer whatever you suffer. That's all. It's always up to you.
I was thinking as you were talking about the choosing, you know, how many of us have had wonderful creations in the process of being made, and as it was being formed and as it was being created, all of a sudden we shifted and we stopped. So what we have is that creation somewhere in our psyche that's still partially built.
Double-mindedness, you know. I had a bad case of that for years and years and years. And, you know, the thing of it is, you don't even know it. You don't take the time to actually approve of what you're thinking about. If you can't approve of it, well, then stop it. That makes sense, doesn't it?
It does. You know, and if you wake up one of those mornings and you say, this can't be my life, then I challenge you to choose a different life. Choose a different thought. Just one thought in a different direction.
That's it. And stick with it all day.
And stick with it. And stick with it.
It is a challenge to you to keep in memory what you decided to be attuned to, because you are being attuned to whatever you're thinking. And if it's nonsense, then you're drawing to you what fills the nonsense. You don't need it. Stop it. Think only on things that are lovely and of good report. Come on, you can do that if you conscious, it's easy to do. If you're unconscious, it goes away. That's all. It's simple as that.